Hello and welcome to another edition of Launch Trajectories from the Abington Launchbox. I'm Peter Hornberger and I'm joined today by Joshua Ventura, and we're going to talk about his business, how he got on the trajectory he is from startup to where he's going right now, and hopefully that launch trajectory continues to grow as he grows the business. So we're in our first real season now of Launch Trajectories. So this is season 1, episode 1. So Joshua, thanks for being kind of our first guest on our first official season. How are you doing?
Thank you for having me.
No problem. Joshua, so as we get started, this is really about you. So tell us a little bit about you, and then we'll get into your business just after that. But who are you, man? What are you studying? What interests do you have?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Joshua Ventura. I go by Josh. I'm a business management and marketing major at Penn State. I primarily go to the Abington campus and I commute there and also run a business while also doing my studies there.
Cool. And so let's talk about the business. You mentioned it. You're juggling a bunch of things right now, obviously, with school life, work life, startup life. Hopefully, you have networking life, personal life, family life. You got all those things going on, which is why we like to bring people like yourself in to share your stories. But let's talk about the business. Tell me a little bit about the business, Josh.
Right. So I am the managing partner here at Sound Gallery Studios. The Sound Gallery Studios is a multifaceted music company. And what we specialize is in three core things. We specialize in recording studios, live events, and artist discovery. We started in 2012, and since then have grown the company to three locations, one here in our headquarter location here in Philadelphia, one in Las Vegas, and we have a third location in Tampa, Florida.
All right, covering the United States, you got like a triangle that covers pretty much everything, all the good stuff happening. So that's really cool, and it's also really, I don't know, I think inspiring, impressive, but also important for people to hear. Right? You started this in 2012, Joshua. This is something you've been working at for a long time, but it's also not something that you waited forever. Like a lot of times people say, well, I need to wait until I finish college. I need to wait until I have $50,000 saved. But go back to that point in time 9 years ago. How did you get started doing recording, artist discovery, production? How do you get started?
Right. So it all started like all passions. It started with a genuine interest. Music has always been something big in my life, and it's primarily due to my family. It played a big role in how I viewed music and how music has been incorporated in my life. My family will always take me to church, and I would always be engulfed in music. And early on, I discovered the power that music has and the impact it has on people's lives. You can be feeling gloomy one day and you could crank on a song that you love, and your whole emotion and your whole perspective would change. And I learned really early on of the power of music, and that has shaped my trajectory with my role in the music industry in my career. Really early on, it started with that genuine interest, and what it made me move into was production. I started producing when I was 14. It just started off with genuine interest. It started off making beats in the back bedroom of my grandmother's house. I made my own little recording studio back there, and I just taught myself how to make beats. That's how it first started. And from there, I needed to find a way to get these beats heard. And I tried to pitch my stuff out to people, and I didn't have no success. People weren't liking my production, people weren't liking my music. And so I had a bright idea. I said, hey, what? Guess what? I'll start rapping on my own music.
There you go.
So I went and learned how to record myself. I started learning the audio engineering component of music. Around this time, I was 15, 16 when I was engineering and learning engineering. And so at the same time, I was also DJing. I
Mm-hmm.
was I pretty much have done every role in music, and it's crazy. But at during this time, I was DJing, I was producing, and I was also engineering. And so this was early on in high school, and everyone knew me as the kid who was the music guy.
Yeah.
And so I started off rapping. Everybody in school knew that Josh had a studio at his house. And this is how the business started. It started in that back bedroom of my grandmother's house.
It's really cool.
Friends in school, people in high school would tell me, "Hey, Josh, I got a song I want to make. Can I go over to your recording studio and record it?" And that's how it started. It started off with those friends I had in high school. It started off with me recording people within my own community.
Yeah.
And it just snowballed little by little. It picked up momentum. And over time, it grew into something that became bigger than just that back room in my grandmother's house where I had a little recording studio. It grew into something where I had to find my own location because it just became something massive. It
Yeah.
started off small.
Right. And that's part of why, I think your story is really good for launch trajectories, and particularly the first season, the first episode, is it's about trajectory, right? It's not necessarily where you start, whether you're starting in a bedroom, whether you're starting, I'm in my basement right now, no matter where you're starting, the point is, how do you set that trajectory and then follow through with the work over the years, putting in the time, getting that feedback. And even when it's not positive, still staying focused and saying, you know what, there's fundamental differences between making beats and selling beats, and then selling beats on a regular basis so that it's enough so that you can pay for rent and do things, and then grow to multiple locations and then go worldwide, right? They're all these, I think, different forms of business. But it's really cool to me that from a young age, you started experimenting with it. But I think what I find more inspiring is the fact that you stuck with it, and now you're in your own space, doing your own thing, and helping other people, find what they dream for. So that to me is a really cool thing.
Right.
So talk to me more about this process. So one thing, I try to be transparent, and I won't say, lots of people feel this way. I feel this way. Sometimes I struggle with giving myself authorization to say, you know what, I'm the producer. How do you kind of settle into these roles? And particularly when you're 15, 16 years old, at what point did you really consider yourself an entrepreneur, a business owner, a producer? Like, when did you give yourself permission to be Josh producer, Josh DJ, Josh audio
Right.
engineer?
So really early on, I've always viewed myself as an entrepreneur. I've always approached my passion as a business, even though I did it for the love, not the monetary gain. I never did it for the money. I still to this day don't do it for the money. But I've always approached it as a business. And that's primarily due to the influence my father had on me. My father was an entrepreneur growing up. He had multiple businesses, and he will always have me around him. And I will always be working with him. And he taught me early on that if you want something, then you're going to have to sacrifice and work towards it. And so I seen this business as something that I will have to sacrifice some time to build that momentum, build that snowball effect where it can build into something bigger, something greater. And so early on, I always approached it as a business. I've always approached it, and I have a product. These customers see it as something that's valuable, and I have to give them the best quality that that I can give them. And so it's always been about how I can give them better quality, how I can become better, how I can make my staff better, how I can add as much value as possible. And so with every single facet of music that I did, I always take this perspective. How can I be better at what I'm doing? And how can I make the lives of my customers better through the product that I'm giving? Because at the end of the day, music is people's dreams, people's lives. Like, I see it firsthand. These are people's dreams. And it's a blessing for me to be working with people who are in the pursuit of their dreams. And that's
Yeah.
really the goal behind this company. It's it's a place where people can execute on their dreams, and we want to expand this to where we can have we can have systems and locations like how we have in Tampa and Vegas and Philadelphia, where children and really anyone in any community can go and execute on their dreams make their music, make the things they love, and just execute on their passions.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned your father and you mentioned your family support a couple of times, and I think that's something that goes a really long way in helping us to take these chances. You know, just having people to look to and say, all right, this isn't crazy. My father's running businesses. My father's doing these things. So this is becomes normal. So can you talk to me about some other things that maybe inspired you, some other things that have supported you along your way in getting to this point? I mean, we know your grandmother gave up the bedroom and let you be back there doing, I'm sure, DJing and producing and doing all that stuff. So talk to me, what else kind of happened in and around you that helped you to build that momentum for your trajectory to take you to where you are now? And what's, I think, going to continue that pathway for you?
Right. So one thing it's always been it's always been a self motivating thing for me. I've never seen motivation in others because I've found really throughout my life that when you try to find motivation in others, it isn't as fluid and it doesn't remain as constant. So it's always been me telling myself, patting myself on the back when I do things, telling myself, hey, you're doing a good job. Because really, as an entrepreneur, you don't really have someone telling you, hey, you're doing a good job. As a founder, there's never someone
Right.
telling you, or as a leader in any business for that matter, telling you, hey, you're doing a good job. It's always you. You have to pat yourself on the back when you do something good. And so you have to have that self motivating factor. You have to be the man in your corner telling yourself, hey, you're doing good. Things is going well. And so it's always been me.
That's good, and you've
Yeah.
done a darn good job at it. And I learned from you, so I've had the pleasure of interacting with you in and around the Penn State campus, and you teach me quite a lot. So it's one of those things that oftentimes I find a true value in the job that I have, is that I get to cross paths with people like yourself that inspire me, and that component again of kind of being self-motivated is really important because oftentimes you don't get someone patting you on the back, but you will get someone knocking on the doors telling you you didn't do this right, this could be better. So you always get kind of a biased opinion if you're listening to just customers or just generally people that aren't supportive of you. You can kind of get overwhelmed sometimes by thinking, man, I'm not doing anything right. But that's where you come in and say, but you know what, my opinion is valid, and my opinion matters, and that's something again that I think you took and drove yourself through what I think is one of the most challenging businesses to start, which is an arts-based creative form, because there's always going to be someone that says, Josh, I know you like that beat, but I don't get it. Doesn't move me. And
Yeah.
there's always going to be somebody that doesn't like your art. I mean, we can go through all kinds of different art forms. There's always a critic of art. But you're doing the art because it matters. It makes a difference. It helps people feel inspired. It helps them feel motivated, proud, confident. And I think because of that, I think that's one of the reasons why I think you're always going to find success, is because you're finding the thing that matters out of the art.
Right. It's become bigger than just a passion for me. I'm helping people realize their dreams. And it's just I've seen and I've witnessed throughout the years the actual impact it's had on the community that I'm from. A lot of the people that come to my studio are at-risk youth.
Mm-hmm.
They're kids 13, 14 years old. Some of these kids have felonies. Some of these kids have been in jail multiple times. And this recording studio is a place for them to be themselves for once, to escape from the community where we are from, to escape from all the drugs, all the violence, all the problems that are in the household. The people I work with the majority of them they're broken. And so this is a place for them to not only express their brokenness, but to create it into something that can uh, influence and change others and make them feel better.
Yeah. So to me, that's the why, right? That's the business, is that component. It just happens to take the form of music production, artist development. It could be anything. You could be teaching
Right.
these kids how to paint, how to write poems, but your format of helping them to feel like they belong, to feel like they have a place to be, to give them a platform to be creators, just happens to be in the music field. And I think, again, that's something for all businesses. When you're starting and you're trying to figure out, why am I doing this? That's what you really want to get down to, is I think the why of the business. The what, music recording, art studios, painting classes, whatever it might be that you're doing for the what, it should connect to that why. And again, I think you've always been able to articulate very clearly that you have the strong why. And I think that really helps me to understand you.
That's something I've thought about for a long time. And what I've come to understand is that you're not necessarily going to figure out what your why is initially. It's something that just happens over time. Like at first, I didn't know what my why was, but over time, you think about the reasons those days when you're getting up early in the morning, you don't feel like working, and you put a perspective to it where you're like, okay, why am I doing this? And then you could only figure out what your why is looking backwards, and so not looking forwards. So one of the biggest problems that founders have is they trying to figure out what the why is initially, when you should just execute and then figure out the why during execution and once the business is already established, and then use that to catapult the business to some further level. Yeah. So that's how I've viewed this idea of your why behind your business and your purpose.
Good. So we're about to wind down. We got a couple more things to cover, but one thing I want to cover is you're a student, you're an entrepreneur, you have family members, you have friends. How do you balance all the stuff that goes into the life of being a student, entrepreneur, and having all the other things going on? How do you balance all that stuff?
So I'm a big proponent of scheduling. Scheduling is the number one thing that I do to stay productive. And my relationship to schedules has changed throughout my life. At first, I hated scheduling, but the way I've learned to view a schedule is not something that's a tyrant. It's not something that should shackle you down and restrict you. A schedule is something that allows you to live the day that you want to live, the perfect day. And so that's the way I approach my schedule. I have certain activities that I have to do throughout the day, but I can also incorporate things that I want to do every single day. And so my schedule is a tool to help me create the day, the ideal day that I want to have.
Yeah. And so I'm sorry, Josh, keep going.
And that's how I've learned to stay productive and stay on top of everything that I've done. It's just maintaining a schedule. And one thing about scheduling and having a schedule is that your schedule is going to change. And so my schedule 6 months ago, your schedule 6 months ago might not have been the same.
Yep.
But those things that are the non-tangibles, those things that are your goals, those things that are most important to you should still remain part of that schedule. And so when you're creating a schedule, you need to think about what it is that I care about most. What is my hierarchy of things that my goals or things that I care about? And think about those things that are at the top of that list. And so incorporate those things into your schedule. And those are non-negotiables. So for me, for instance, that's going to the gym, studying, spending time to be creative. These are things that I have to incorporate in my schedule because they're important. Yeah. So it doesn't matter how my schedule changes and how demanding the things are in my life, I have to incorporate it. And there's always time to do so.
Right. So time is a resource, and we often look at it as a challenge, and it can be both. But I think when you frame it the way you just did, it's now a resource and an opportunity for you to do more things, to take advantage of the priorities that you have. If there was no time, we wouldn't have priorities, because everything would have an infinite amount of time to get done. So nothing would ever rise to a level of critically important. And I think what you just framed out very expertly is how important it is to establish those priorities. And that's again why we wanted to create this series of videos and podcasts, so that we could get the stories out about how we have a campus at Penn State Abington, and in and around just the Penn State entrepreneurial ecosystem, we have plenty of individuals like Josh that are doing remarkable things. They're not just great students, but they're also entrepreneurs. They're community members, family members. And that's really what we want to bring to you on a regular basis. So, Josh, I'm out of questions, but what else anything else you want to talk about? Anything else you think is critically important for people to know about you and your entrepreneurial pathway?
Well, I encourage anyone who has a desire to start an entrepreneurial path in their passions to just start now. Start with what you have and start within the community that you have. Start with the people that you know. And over time, what will happen is it will snowball, it will catapult, and it will build bigger and bigger. But it all starts with taking action. So I encourage every entrepreneur to not wait for perfection, not wait for the perfect time to execute, because time is of essence, and that's the most important thing in business. And so if you can execute early on and build that momentum, then your business will have success in the future.
Yeah, and I'm also going to throw in what part of what you shared when you were making beats. You show people, release what you're working to the public. So if you create everything and you keep it only inside yourself, only in your basement, only in your grandmother's bedroom, and nobody outside of that space ever gets to see or hear what you're working on, you're not going to be able to get the opportunity to build and grow and challenge yourself to make the next thing happen. Cool. Well, Joshua, it has been a pleasure to have you on our episode today. It's always great talking to you, whether it's on campus, whether it's via Zoom. I find your story to be incredibly relevant, and hopefully it will resonate with other students on the Penn State campuses. But I would just throw in, it's been really meaningful to me just to hear your stories, because it helps me to reprioritize my time, my energy, and my goals. Because I hear it from you and I'm like, yeah, you know what, Josh is right. And Josh is somebody I can look to for inspiration as well as guidance. And I appreciate the past probably year and a half that we've gotten to spend together through classes and learning about your entrepreneurship endeavor. And I'm glad you took some time to share it with the rest of the people.
Thank you, Peter. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. So we'll wrap up there. If you want to recommend a new guest, if you know someone in and around the Penn State community that is starting a business, running a business, has inspirational stories, feel free to reach out to us at the Abington Launchbox, and we would be happy to continue the conversation with them and learn more about their launch trajectory. So you can check us out on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. And if you like our stories, subscribe, check out Joshua on his social media platforms as well. Joshua, anything you want to plug before we wrap up where people can learn more about you?
Yeah, sure. So people can follow me on IG at Josh_Staxx, STAXX. And that's me on all socials. You can find me on my socials there at Josh_Staxx. My business is the Sound Gallery. We're at the soundgallerystudios.com. And you can find us just searching us up on Google. You'll find all our information there. We're everywhere.
Cool.
Again, thank you for having me.
Thanks, Josh. So that's where we'll wrap, and we'll see you again with another episode of Launch Trajectories. Thanks.